It turns out that love is a strongly cross-cultural phenomenon. If you send cultural anthropologists around the world, every culture has an idea of romantic love. It's not always allowed to take hold, it's not always encouraged, it's not the dominant model. And in every culture, the description is fairly similar. When we're in love, we exaggerate the good traits of our beloved, and we downplay, we exaggerate the good traits, we downplay the bad traits, and we like ourselves better when we're in love. And we are not very good in overall evaluation. So, a number of years ago, a scientist named Lucy Brown at Einstein decided to do an experiment. She put an ad out for people who were newly, madly, deeply in love. In the first year or two of a relationship, where they were all out, passionate, completely gaga over each other. And she said, all right, well, what I want you to do is come to the lab and bring a picture of your sweetheart, and then bring a picture of a friend who you have never had a romantic or sexual relationship with, a good friend. And the idea behind this design, the idea that it was first done just with straight folks, and the idea behind this design was she didn't want to see brain imaging that was just like for familiar faces or people you knew well. She wanted to see what actually had to do with when you were looking at a picture of your beloved. She thought that by comparing the two patterns of activation, she could do this. That's a reasonable first start of design. So she brought people in, newly, madly, deeply, men and women, had them look at pictures of their beloved, and amazingly, it looked an awful lot like the moment of orgasm. So there was strong activation of the medial forebrain pleasure circuit. There was no activation of the temporal. But there was strong deactivation of social cognition areas. Oh, that sore on his lip, that's nothing. And that probably happened with police, that'll go away. And judgment and evaluation centers in the medial prefrontal cortex. It's actually the pattern of brain activation by looking at a picture of your beloved when you're really madly, deeply in love comports extraordinarily well with the subjective experience of being an idiot. Deeply in love, like we all are. And so, well, all right, so this experiment was done in New York City among a certain bunch of people, among straight people. What happens if you do it with gay folks? Same, doesn't matter. What happens if you do it in Beijing instead of New York City? Doesn't matter, it's the same. What happens if you do it with old married people, together 20 years or more? So if you get old married folks together and you ask them, do you feel the same about your sweetheart now as you did when you first met? About 19 out of 20 people will say, no, I don't. It's not that same burning, passionate, wonderful thing. Now it's mellowed into, a more relaxed friendship. It's a different kind of thing, but it's not that same burning, intense, passionate thing. And 1 out of 20 people would say, yep, it's exactly that. It's just as intense, it's just as burning, it's just as passionate. And I know when I first heard that, I thought, bullshit. Like, you have watched too much Oprah. You're saying that because you want to appear a certain way, but I just don't believe it. All right, so what happens if you get these folks into the brain scan machine? Well, all right, it turns out that for the 19 out of 20 you get them in the brain scan machine, they look at the picture of their beloved, flat line, no pleasure. Occasionally, deactivation of social cognition? No. Deactivation of evaluation and planning? Executive function? No. These people are seeing their long-term partner in the cold, cruel light. What about the 1 in 20? Well, remarkably, they still see an activation of the medial forebrain pleasure circuit. They still see some, not as much, but some deactivation of the social cognition and evaluation centers and executive function centers. And, well, so why is that? Are those folks born that way? Do they have relationships that particular style. If one person in a couple has that, is the other person in a couple more likely to have that? Well, we don't know. But perhaps if I can come back a number of years ago, someone will do the studies like that. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll be happy to take some questions. Yes?
So you said about, if you have a addiction, but you're still getting pleasure in this one addiction. But I mean, I know a lot of people that drink a lot so in other words, if you're still enjoying it, but it's not an addiction, that's what you said. So I'm just asking
well, so if you look and you ask, psychologists have some very particular criteria for what constitutes an addiction. And they, like most of the things that psychologists do, it's kind of like a menu. Well, out of these 10 things, you got 5 or 6. And these are things like it disrupts your work life, it disrupts your social life, you cancel events in order to do this. When you can't do this, you have withdrawal symptoms. And so there's a whole set of criteria that come in to define whether you have crossed the threshold into addiction. Generally speaking, what we understand is for most addictions, the pleasure decreases, the pleasure drains away. And what's bad about it is that it's not just that the pleasure drains away for the thing you're addicted to. It's that it tends to also rob pleasure. It tends to make you anhedonic or unable to feel pleasure for a very large number of things. So a late-stage heroin addict isn't really interested in food very much. It isn't really interested in sex very much. Late-stage gambling addict, the same way. Late-stage alcohol, the same way. In other words, it's not just like you burn out the part of your pleasure center that has to do with alcohol or with gambling or with sex. Unfortunately, it generalizes. Now, so you might ask, what's your prospect? So let's say you get clean, and you've been clean for a long time. Well, in humans, the only way we can assess this is through non-invasive measures like brain scanners, and they're very, very crude. It's kind of like, imagine if you have a football stadium full of people, and you want to have a conversation with each one, and you do that with an electrode, like the cells in the brain. But what you got is that you can dangle a microphone over certain sections and kind of hear the general hubbub. That's about the level of resolution we have with brain scanning machines. Now, in animal studies, and you can get rats and monkeys, for example, addicted to a number of these substances. It seems as while if you get clean, there are some things in the medial forebrain pleasure circuit that will gradually change back. There are others that stay changed through your entire life. Yes?
If dopamine decreases, what serotonin or
So the question is, do serotonin and norepinephrine also have influences on the experience of pleasure? And the answer is that they do, but they're much more subtle and complex. Dopamine is the main one here. So that is why, for example, selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors like the drug Strattera, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like the drug Prozac, are not counted for. Yes?
So you're speaking about how evolution has sort of shaped and formed our reward circuitry. And now that we're starting to have sort of an inkling of how this circuitry actually works, I wonder if this is like a thought exercise. Do you have any predictions about the future of reward circuitry?
I have no predictions whatsoever about what the future of reward circuitry is. I think the thing we have to realize is that evolution is very, very slow. Cultures change very, very fast. So it's a fallacy. If you kind of look at the way we live right now, and you try to find evolutionary explanations, a lot of times it doesn't work out very well. Let's take food, for example, right? So many of us, for most of our evolutionary time as humans, we were in small hunter-gatherer bands. There was a lot of intermittent famines. In this situation, if you encounter things that are calorically dense, things that are sweet, things that are fatty, it makes a whole lot of sense to snarf it all down as much as you can. Pack on some pounds to try to get yourself through the next day. Right? Well, now pretty much everyone in this room lives in a situation with unlimited food. There is no danger now. We still have that instinct, and it doesn't serve us well in the modern situation. The other thing to realize is that all evolution cares about is you getting your genes in the next generation, and either through your own children or through the children of people who are related to you. Evolution doesn't care if you have a fulfilling retirement, right? You know, once you've launched your kids, that's it, you're done. And so what happens after that, you know, except for a very minor contribution that you have, say, to your children in later life or your grandchildren, it's a non-entity. So there is a limited range of the human lifespan of human behavior for which evolutionary explanations are appropriate. Yes?
Research on women who maybe are pregnant and take the antidepressants in terms of that transference to children. It's in utero. And do you see much know about the impact of trying to prevent that depression through the pregnancy?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, I'm sure there is literature on this, and maybe even some of the brain researchers in the back of the room know about this. I don't know about that. What I do know about is this. It's very, very clear that if your mother was stressed while she was carrying you, then your chance of several neuropsychiatric diseases become higher in your later life. So your chance of developing an addiction is about doubled if your mother underwent a severe life stress while she was carrying. Your chance of developing schizophrenia is doubled. If your mother was stressed by malnutrition, it's a little bit more than doubled. And the initial indications from this came from studies of what's called the Dutch hunger winter. In the winter of 1944-45 in Holland, the Germans were starving the Dutch population out. There was very, very little food. And there were the women who were pregnant over that winter, their children have been followed in epidemiological studies. And so that is the basis for that particular conclusion. Yes, back.
Are you more likely to develop addiction as a woman or as a man? Is there a difference?
So it turns out that, so that's a great question. Are you more likely, are men or women more likely to develop addiction? In North America, addictions for gambling, much more common than now. Addictions for drugs, a little bit more common than now. Addictions for alcohol, about equal opportunity. In other cultures, these things shift a little bit. So, I mean, this is a place where some biology and some opportunities collide. And I think, so this is something that's worthwhile explaining. So, for example, gambling addiction, right? Well, gambling addiction is going to be determined in part biologically by people who carry gene variants that make it more likely. But also, if you live in a place where you have easy access to gambling, well, then there are more people who become gambling addicts. And there are a large number of studies that have been done with this, both in terms of legal and illegal gambling, with lotteries, and casino gambling. It's very, very clear. When you give people more opportunity to gamble, you got more gambling addicts. When you make drugs, when you make alcohol more easy, more legal, you get more addicts. So in terms of men and women, there is a kind of, I think, a confluence of cultural and biological factors there. But if I were to sort of rephrase your question, if I were to look at slides or electrical recordings of the medial forebrain pleasure circuit of a man or a woman, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference.